In 2017, a little game called Escape from Tarkov released into beta access. Some say it may never leave, but many, including myself, have really seen the game come a very long way. It is a game that has undoubtedly made its own genre and created its own version of gaming for so many different people. Yeah, there are a lot of games that are out there that share a lot of characteristics with EFT, but none that you can say really bring the same thing to the table. Then, for a few years, it sort of stood on its own. Games like Hunt Showdown, The Cycle Frontier came along and challenged the genre. And for better or worse, they did a decent job, for at least creating competition. But the biggest ask from a chunk of the community was, I just want this type of game that doesn't have all the sweaty PvP players, or at least a matchmaking system that puts me in a game where people are around the same skill. Some of these other games have these, but they don't really hit the same buttons. They don't tick the same boxes, not in the same way. Now, before you rage click and close the video saying that's not everybody, there are enough people and there's a large enough population to prompt someone to make a game just for that. And such a game hadn't been made yet. Until now. Welcome to Watchlist Wednesday, and today, the game we're going to be talking about is called ZERO Sievert. A game that can give Tarkov lovers something that scratches a very particular itch many players have. No, it doesn't give that PvP domination satisfaction or a first-person shooter pleasing gameplay, but what it does give is a thematic looter shooter with an immersive contextual path of tasks, lots of weapons and attachments, weapon and ammo types, armors, and a balance of challenge and combined with true risks and rewards, decision making really. And this is all from a super early demo and now some very brief early access. Well, that's at least what I'm getting at. There's a lot in the game right now, and there's a lot to probably be developed still, but this is what we see now. The game is now in early access, but even in the demo, there was just so much revealed to all of the people in the audience that were interested that it really, really gave something to look forward to. At least for me, and hopefully now to you. I spent about 20 hours in the second demo, and about 8 in the early access build before I started recording this video and started talking about these things, and I've had so much fun playing through what is currently available. However, I haven't done everything, and the devs report that there's about 40 hours worth of tasks and all kinds of things to do. The maps are also procedurally generated in a game like this, so even if there's nothing to do task-wise, you're still getting a semi-unique experience when playing each and every map. The maps in this game don't get crazy, but it's enough to not just repeat loot and run and doing the same thing over and over again, going after the same exact things. So far, the game like ZERO Sievert does a lot. Right now, it's got 5 playable maps, a 6th looking like it's on the way, a couple slots for some new stuff in the future, and they're teasing quite a bit of new aspects and things in their Discord. There's a lot of people who seem to enjoy it, and really everybody's having what seems like a good time. Before we go any further in talking about this, I must mention that there were a couple of my Twitch streams that were directly sponsored by the publishers of ZERO Sievert. But everything I did after the first 2 hours of the demo and all the gameplay I did in the early access after 2 hours after that, so the following 22 hours were quite literally because I was having so much damn fun. I should also mention that I was very close to writing ZERO Sievert off, honestly. Paying little to no attention to it during their first PR push and demo, they contacted me and described it as another game that is exactly, or at least semi-like Escape from Tarkov. In a time when EFT gamers were just hearing about nothing but Tarkov likes. Tarkov like this, Tarkov like that, and I was going out of town, so I was going to see my family and I didn't really have time, so it really wasn't an option anyway, and I just was gonna throw it to the wind. Another game that gets in my emails all the time. So I just kind of put it aside and just to see if anything came later. As I heard from a friend who was trying it during the first demo, he mentioned that he had a great time and I took a deeper look. And I'm glad I did. Here are some of the comparisons to what I would call from ZERO Sievert to a game like Escape from Tarkov. Let's talk about Escape from Tarkov specifically. So, as viewers of other series that we do, and other series throughout YouTube and Twitch and what have you, when it comes to something like Tarkov, you know by now that when somebody compares one game to another, and if you watch any of my content, this is a big deal, I have a hard time really understanding what I'm listening to, because most of the time when I actually play the game that's being compared, it usually is described, in my opinion, wrong, and I don't see the exact comparison. For example, when the cycle came out, it's just like Tarkov. The cycle is just like Tarkov, but in space, which, as we maybe and hopefully all agree by now, is not. It's just blatantly not true. Has some similarities, and like I said, it tests the genre, but it's not the same, right? Call of Duty is not like Battlefield. They have similarities, but they're completely different vibes and have completely different objectives, you know? However, it is important to point out that one of the closer things that has so many things on the game on the market really brings it to a comparison level, which is why people do it. It's important for genres and market. I get that. So before we go any further, again, please remember that I'm not saying this game is Tarkov, but I am saying that is the closest thing thematically and full feel-wise that we've seen so far, in my opinion. But instead of using comparisons like that, because I hate them, let's talk about specifics. So, what are the things that are like Tarkov? Well, it's a looter shooter, as I mentioned before. You spawn in, shoot bad guys, make a decision to shoot neutral guys, whether you want to or not, find loot and leave. There are a plethora of guns, however, clearly not as many as Tarkov, and you actually get to pick ones you like and just keep going with it. It seems to be the theme of what it is, kind of how you do in Tarkov, and, well, not as hardcore as we'll get to in a second, so you don't have to just run through them, which is kind of nice, actually, but, you know, still a similarity there. Attachments and customization, so you can get foregrips and lasers and lights and, you know, sights and scopes and all that stuff. Death and loss of gear in this loot and loot in this didn't persist, and I don't think they're gonna change that. It seems like they're very stuck on having not really a risk of losing all your stuff, but you don't get to take anything home. I think this is a big complaint into something like DMZ that's happening right now, which we might do a video on later. But this is sort of for a lot of the players that don't really want that huge risk. However, with the amount of time that I've played, I will very much say that it still sucks to have a really, really good run, especially if you're looking for things that you just haven't found in hours, and then lose it because, well, you got caught sleeping or somebody just messed you up. The AI can be a little tricky. This probably won't change, like I said before. It's probably going to stay this way. They don't want to make you feel bad at the end of the day. And Tarkov is a game and a game genre that sort of pushes that to the limit of having really high highs and really low lows. This game is, again, kind of Tarkov-like, but it's not going to give you that same feel. Like I said, it's not Tarkov, but it's important to make those connections, like I said. And I will never ever say that this game is like Tarkov, but as I've said several times now, and I'm rambling, it has those connections, and I think people who enjoy that game, EFT, will find joy in this game, which is why we're covering it. There are bosses and ramping up difficulty between maps and enemies. There's base building and upgrades. However, a lot of this is not quite done yet, and you don't have to do the same exact things, but you still build up your base, and those are all pretty much upgrades for what you do. I would like to see a little bit of changes in the menus of the stash and stuff like that, and sometimes a little confusing, but I have a feeling they're going to go through and fix that. It's a little less annoying, hopefully. Most of all the need to hoard is still there. Unlike something like DMZ, I don't mean to keep mentioning a third game, but unlike something like DMZ, you actually have to worry about all the things you need and all the things you need to bring back, and it gives you that sort of stress, but also a good thing for the people who like this to be like, I need these, I need these. Thankfully, in the game, it has a nice little tracker that says, these are the items that you need. It's not going to tell you how many you need. It's not going to tell you if if you don't need it anymore and you keep tracking it. It's not going to take that tracker away. But, you know, if you need it, the game will tell you. So that's kind of nice, and it's a nice quality of life thing. My memory's pretty good, but when it comes to individual items like that, I don't think I make the space in my brain for it. So now let's talk about what is unlike Tarkov. And I think there are some things that is probably more important to a lot of people watching this than it is to the people that really want to know what it's like, because I think the biggest draw and the biggest reason people are upset right now and annoyed maybe is because they keep hearing things. Well, this is like Tarkov, this is like Tarkov, this is like, let's talk about what's not like Tarkov and see if you like it from here. This is part of why we're calling it Watchlist, so that you get to pay attention to it. I'm not telling you to go buy anything, it's just keep an eye on it, see if it's something that you're interested in. It is a top-down isometric shooter, kind of like Enter the Gungeon if you ever played that. It's a roguelite, very good, one of my favorite games of all time, where you're top-down shooting in a 360-degree angle. No vertical angles or anything like that, just 360 moving around. And it's absolutely not an FPS, but it does have similarities. It has crosshairs. When you right-click with a scope, it will use that scope reticle, and you can use it that way and use it like a sniper scope. The maps feel lived in because they have fauna and environment. I call this a plus on ZERO Sievert's side. I would love to see something like this in Tarkov, as I've been saying for years. But you'll see that as you play, having these things just kind of randomly pop up that aren't other hunters, which are the AI simulated, PMCs and stuff like that. And there's no scavengers or scavs or whatever. There's also bears, or not bears, but boars and wolves and rabbits and all kinds of things that are both friendly to you and also dangerous to you. There's also an added element of some other ghouls and stuff like that, but I'll let you guys figure that out. I'm not going to spoil any of that for you. There are environmental dangers in the game, something that Tarkov has talked about adding many times before, and they probably will eventually, but there's radioactivity in ZERO Sievert, and the wildlife can, bring you to it. There's a lot of different areas where you have to go to and get certain things, and you have to worry about your gear being protecting from you and whatnot. There's quest lines that bring you there, and sometimes it can force you into some unwanted situations, sometimes during a fight against some other NPCs. It gets a little crazy, and I would love to see this in Tarkov at some point. I'm pretty sure we will. I don't know when, but we probably will. In-map NPCs are meant to be interacted with and spoken to as well. They're not all bad guys, and they're not all people that you are friendly with or enemies with. There are things that will probably give you quests later, something we might also see in Tarkov, but not yet. So it's kind of, it's important to talk about the fact that ZERO Sievert is doing things that Tarkov has talked about doing, and obviously it's way easier for the devs of ZERO Sievert to put this stuff in because it's a less intensive game, less realistic game. But it also is important to look at these things because these are things that keep the immersion, and which is very important to me, alive. There are things people you can go and talk to and trade with, and like I said, get quests from. But right now, this is something that looks really cool on ZERO Sievert's side, and I think you'd be interested to check that out. It's definitely easy to talk about how games like ZERO Sievert have features that Escape from Tarkov don't, but I know how robust it is, like we were saying, and it's something to pay attention to see what happens in the future. It's unfair to make these comparisons, in my opinion. I'm just putting it out there because I think it does show off ZERO Sievert pretty well in a good light. It does, however, it is usually the small things that make a game great. So while these are things that Tarkov talks about putting in the future, I'm sitting here saying these are cool things that I think we should have focused on maybe early on, because if you want to talk about immersion, this is pretty much part of that. This is a big part of that, actually. Things are small, but they're there for a big reason, and they create so much immersion. There's been so many times when playing ZERO Sievert where I'm, fighting with 2 NPCs or fighting with a group of NPCs, just me versus 5 and something like that. I get backed up because they're kind of messing me up. All of a sudden there's wolves behind me. Yeah, you can see that as frustrating, but I can also see that as, hey, this is kind of more realistic, at least situational wise. And I think that's a good thing to think about. And as I always say, immersion is probably the #1 thing that keeps me in a game. Even if it's a simple game, even if it's pixelized, like ZERO Sievert, it is a game that it is a feature and function that will keep me interested. And I think I'm very much not alone in that. I love Tarkov. I love it for all its wins and all its losses, but I love it for how it tries to accomplish all these things within a more realistic fashion. In fact, the main reason I like to talk about Tarkov so much in this Watchlist Wednesday is not just because I'm trying to compare a game, but because I don't want this to replace Tarkov. I want this to give you something to do when you're frustrated, and I think the devs want that too. In fact, one of the devs was in my chat one of these times and said, hey, we just want to give players an alternative game to when Tarkov feels unfun, which is roughly exactly what they said. I don't have it on me, so I can't put it there, but pretty much what has been said. And I think that's very important to point out that they're very aware of what they're doing, and I think that is something unlike other devs making other games who are not trying to make Tarkov. They're not trying to make something that is similar or competitive or what have you sometimes. Sometimes they're just trying to make something different, and the audience made that comparison. ZERO Sievert and Cabo and Modern Wolf are trying to make something that is an alternative, but also not a replacement, and I think that's important. It's much simpler, it's more condensed, and it provides a rich amount of things to do in such a fun way. I'm really impressed. So, whether you're in the demographic of the games I've compared to or not, I do believe this is something to keep on your watch list. It is out in early access. It's $19.99 or €17.99 euros, but $19.99 USD. And there's an absolute buttload of content to play through, and I really think that if you give it some time and to sink your teeth into it for a while, either as your main game content or something that just helps you take a break from something else, you're probably going to have a good time, and maybe it'll save you from pulling your hair out. So, with that, until next time, my name is Danotage, and I'll see ya.